Great, thank you. Hi everyone. Happy to be presenting to you today. I want to give a big thank you to the DigitalGov team. We always appreciate their support in holding these webinars for the DAP community. So we only have about an hour to go over today's content. Now, today's DAP webinar is a special one. We have not typically done these types of webinars in the past, but we want to help bring you up to speed and help you understand how you need to be thinking in the direction of analyzing your site. So we're going to attempt to do that today. If the format works well and people have good feedback on the format, I think we'll definitely be interested in doing this type of thing in the future. So again, this is a new format, a new approach that we're going to take today, but definitely looking to everyone's feedback after today's webinar. So today's webinar is another part of our learning series for DAP. It's on site analysis and doing this live and walking through how to think about analyzing your site. So let's jump in. So what we're going to cover today, we're going to be doing a live demonstration of a real site analysis, from defining website mission, goals, and KPIs, to pulling reporting, to better understanding site performance of specific goals. I want to give a big thank you to Dan Fryer at the USDA for partnering with the DAP team. We've met with Dan and we have been brainstorming on how his team would like to start thinking about looking at their data and understanding their site performance. Now, we have a lot of really interesting use cases for the USDA.gov site, but we chose one specific use case to really hopefully dig into and illustrate for the community how to think about this. So, you know, the DAP community can really learn a lot from how the USDA is thinking about their DAP data. So we're going to cover how the USDA thinks about their site from a high-level strategic perspective, and then we're going to dive into some ideas and explore those in a very simplistic way for how you could start analyzing a specific goal for your website. So before we begin, this is tough, right? In many of our webinars, for example, the DAP 101 and the 201, we typically refer to Google Analytics as a tool that tells you the who, the how, and the what, but it doesn't tell you the why. Why is something happening on our site, right? This is the toughest part. The tool tells us the who, the how, and the what. It doesn't tell us the why. This is our job as analysts to figure this out. And hopefully we're going to be talking in a way today that helps you start to think in that direction of how to figure this out. Now, an hour does not do this process justice. Analysis of a site is really difficult. You should not expect to do this in an hour. This could take weeks. It all really depends on what your website mission, goals, and KPIs are. Now, there is no such thing as a perfect analysis. As we've mentioned in many webinars in the past, analytics is not accounting. This is not an accounting exercise. Data is directional. We don't recommend you turn this into an accounting exercise, but we do recommend thinking in the direction of looking to infer high-level trends from your data. So, our challenge: analyzing any website is difficult. There is no one-size-fits-all approach. What might work for the USDA might not work for your site. Now, again, I want to reiterate, Google Analytics is a tool that tells you the how, the who, and the what, but it doesn't tell you the why. This is our job. So, to analyze a website, we need to think strategically first before we dive into DAP Google Analytics. Now, I know a lot of folks here love to jump into the data, and while we certainly encourage you to understand and learn your data, ultimately, if you're not first being strategic and thinking high level about why and how you're going to pull that data, then it's not really going to mean anything. So let's talk about this big strategic question. So to pull any type of reporting and have meaning to the data, you need to know your website mission, goals, and KPIs. This is really the most important foundational part of this process, because this literally defines the lens through which you understand your site, and it cascades through how you need to pull your reporting. Without this, you'll never be able to pull useful reporting. You will constantly be in a feedback loop of trying to pull page views. You can't really glean a whole lot of insight from page views. So this is really a paradigm shift in how we need to be thinking about analyzing our user engagement on our sites. You also need to know what types of questions your leadership is asking of you. Now, oftentimes, leadership may not know what types of questions to ask because they don't necessarily know how Google Analytics works and what's possible. So for you as the subject matter expert on Google Analytics in your various agencies, you need to kind of wear both the analyst hat, but also a teacher hat, helping your leadership understand what is available in Google Analytics and how you might leverage that and what types of questions your leadership can ask of you. Now, in addition to all of these other things, you really need to figure out how to pull the reporting that answers your business questions and helps you figure out how to think about your goals. Okay. You also need to be able to present and communicate data to your leadership team and to use your data and your insights to make strategic decisions. Now, for our perspective, we really need to be thinking about how do we serve information, tools, PDF downloads, how do we serve all of that content to our audience, to the American public? How do we do that, right? How do we create the path of least resistance for our audience to get to the information we want them to get? So a lot of folks here are typically looking at not only content engagement, but how easy it is for our audience to engage with our content. Okay, so let's kind of drill into this larger strategic question. Let's talk about the website mission. We talked about the website mission, goals, and KPIs. We're now going to kind of break these out. So conceptually, you can think about these and take this back to your specific organization. So website mission, this is simply telling and documenting why your website exists. This is your 30,000-foot view of your site. Think about how you'd explain your website to someone who's unfamiliar with government. Maybe you have some friends that have no clue what you do during your day job. How would you explain what your website is designed to do? This is the 30,000-foot view about why it exists. Okay. Now, goals. What are you trying to get your users to literally do on your site? Is it download a PDF? Is it submit a form? Is it reach a particular destination URL? You need to be very specific in what specific goals you're defining. They need to represent a specific action that exists on your site. Now, everyone's goal is going to be different because everyone's sites are built differently. Now, the goal needs to be SMART. Whenever you're thinking about constructing a goal, think of the acronym SMART. Your goal needs to be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely. Now let's look at a general example of a goal. Increase organic search traffic form submission conversion rate by 5% in Q4 compared to last year. That is an example of how specific you need to define your goals. If you don't get this specific, you're always going to be in a loop where you're trying to reverse engineer your Google Analytics data. And inevitably, many of us end up just pulling page views and calling it a day. The challenge is, if you're just looking at page views, there's nothing really useful there to glean any insights to help you make smarter decisions about the user experience for your website. Now, let's talk a little bit more about goals. By defining your goals up front, you're never going to have to worry about how or why you're pulling page views because you're always going to be pulling reporting to understand your goals. Now, obviously, every government agency is different. Every website is different. Depending on your agency and how your site is structured, various teams within your agency likely will have different goals, and that's fine. You just need to figure out for your specific team, what are those goals? You might have many potential goals you could choose from, but you really need to think in the direction of narrowing it down to a handful of high-level goals so that you can define success metrics to them. You should not have a list of 25 different goals for your section of the site. In that scenario, you start to lose the forest from the trees. There's too much noise if you're looking at 25 different goals. You really need to align these goals with your website mission. Again, I've got an example of a goal just for your reference. Again, everyone's going to get the deck after this webcast, so we'll be excited to hear your feedback on it. Let's talk about key performance indicators, otherwise known as KPIs. This is a metric that is used to assess the success of your goals. So for every goal that you define, you have to attribute a KPI to that goal. Otherwise, you don't know how you're performing or underperforming. Now, this KPI is usually going to be a ratio, and it's usually reported on as some form of conversion rate. So, for example, in our generic goal that I just referred to previously, the form submission conversion rate tells you the number of times a form was submitted, divided by the total number of sessions entering your site or a page. This simply tells you the percentage share of all traffic that submitted a form on your site. So let's say your percentage share of all traffic that's been submitted a form on your site was 2%, but your goal was 5%. Well, right there, you can see that you did not reach your goal. So that naturally leads you down the path of asking strategic questions. What levers do we need to pull to increase that form submission conversion rate over time so that we can reach our goal of 5%? Please note that if you're simply looking at page views, there's no way that you're ever going to be able to assess the performance of any of your goals. Now, the beauty of defining a conversion rate for whatever interaction represents success to your organization is that once you've defined that conversion rate, you can then report on past data to understand how your form submission conversion rate performed over time. So what that can let you do is you could actually go back 2 years in the past and look at the two numbers that define your KPI, calculate those on a monthly basis, and then you'll have an average over time of what on average is the form submission conversion rate. You can use this as your benchmark for any future reporting. And what this also lends itself to is you're then able to communicate to your senior leadership context. Without defining a KPI, you have no context. So it would behoove you to not only have very specific goals, but to also define the conversion rate so that you have context, you can make strategic decisions, and you'll be able to communicate all of this to your senior leadership in a meaningful way. Now, this part you're going to have to manually do in a spreadsheet. A little bit later, we're going to talk about this in very general terms. We don't want to overwhelm anyone, but we'll just talk about this conceptually. Now, one thing I do want to note here, for goals and for KPIs, the sky's the limit here. And why is that? Well, you can use any number of different metrics to define a conversion rate. There is no one size fits all of a KPI. We cannot tell you, do this. You need to figure out, how do we define our conversion rate? It's all based on how your site is designed, what types of button clicks occur, and then how you need to pull that reporting, okay? Okay, so let's talk about the USDA. So we partnered with Dan Fryer over at the USDA, and they look at a number of really cool things about the USDA.gov website. Now, in partnering with the USDA, we were really looking at what is the website mission, goals, and KPIs of the USDA.gov site. So on the screen, this is kind of the main homepage. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we learned from the USDA and Dan's team about how they think about the site. So let's kind of dive into this. So let's talk about the mission. So when we asked Dan, you know, what is the site designed to do? So he said to us his elevator pitch. He communicated that the USDA.gov website has 18 high-level topics from farming and forestry to opioids and broadband that are the starting point for our customers to find services and resources from the USDA's 29 sub-agencies. That's a lot of stuff, but that is what the site is ultimately designed to do. Now, a little bit more background here. The USDA site is designed to capture top-of-funnel traffic via external marketing channels by leveraging these 18 high-level topics. Now, the USDA's homepage content changes daily and weekly. The site is promoted in various ways at various times via email, traffic, social media, organic search, obviously drives a large share of traffic. All sub-agencies live on the USDA domain, except for the Forest Service. Now, one thing to note, all of these 29 sub-agencies live on a subdomain except for the Forest Service. So what that means is for the Agricultural Marketing Service, they will be located at ams.usda.gov and so forth for the other agencies. Okay. So how do we approach thinking about this strategically? So for the USDA.gov, obviously with so much content and so many different sub-agencies, it is absolutely critical for the USDA to define specific goals for their site. Perhaps each sub-agency might have their own separate goals. That's really a question up to the USDA. But the important thing here is to just get started. Even if you're unsure about whether you feel confident about the goals you've chosen, you need to just get started and kind of fumble through awkwardly the process of trying to reverse engineer and figure out what's my goal and how am I going to measure that goal. So let's talk about how we do this. Now, before we talk about how we do this, I just want to reiterate. Remember the mission we just defined. The USDA.gov website has 18 high-level topics from farming and forestry to opioids and broadband that are the starting point for our customers to find services and resources from our 29 sub-agencies. That's the umbrella statement. That's the mission for why the USDA.gov website exists. Now, a key point about goals that everyone on the webinar today has to think about. The USDA's goals should align with your mission statement and help explain what represents success on your site. Notice that nowhere have I mentioned page views. We need to figure out what represents success on your site. Okay, so let's talk about the USDA's goals. Now, just to reiterate again, remember, goals need to be SMART, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely. Now, we've got two goals up here, just as examples. The first one is simply increase traffic to the USDA website. The second one is increase total traffic by 5% to the organic certified content topic in order to increase click-through rate into the organic integrity database by 2% in October 2019 versus last year. Now, for folks at home watching this webinar, which goal do you think is the best goal to be thinking about here? I'll tell you which one. It's the really specific goal that lays out not only thresholds for engagement, but it's very specific about the type of content, the specific action that you want your users to take, and where they're trying to go, and what is your target range, and what is the time range. This is how you need to shift your paradigm in your reporting. Simply increasing traffic to the USD website is not a goal. Looking at the total number of page views on your website is not a goal. Providing context, targets, specific URLs, that is a goal. Okay, so let's talk about some more background with the USDA's goals. The USDA wants to understand performance and influence of its USDA Organic topic. to provide companies and farmers information on how to become a certified organic producer. So what this is anything that you buy at the grocery store that's organic, it needs to have an organic label. This is the section of the site that helps farmers and companies apply to be certified organic. So let's take a look at this page. Now, on my screen here, you see the USDA Organic topic page. Now, within this page, we've got a lot of different content, all geared towards farmers, companies, anyone, any business trying to figure out and learn about becoming organic certified. So obviously, this is really important to a lot of different farmers and companies all over the US. Now, let's talk about the background around the goal of this content. So obviously the goal is to help companies and farmers learn about becoming certified and to help those already certified to continue to learn. So one way the USDA defines success is looking at the click-through rate into what they call the Organic Integrity Database hosted by the AMS, the Agricultural Marketing Service, on the USDA.gov domain. So AMS is simply a sub-agency that I referred to in the beginning with the 29 sub-agencies. So they are responsible for the labeling and for the policy and for the tools to help empower farmers and companies to get that organic certified label. They're the organic police if people are misusing labels. So that's what the AMS does. So why is the Organic Integrity Database important? Well, we're going to talk about that. We're going to show some screenshots in just a few seconds. But basically, the USDA wants its certified organic farmers and companies to access this tool called the Organic Integrity Database. This represents success to the USDA. The very act of entering the USDA's Organic Integrity Database is a marker for them that infers success. Now, in this tool, you can search and see the status of a farm or a business. Farmers and companies can check on their status as well. This database tells you whether a farm or business is certified, whether their certification has been surrendered, suspended, or revoked. Obviously, folks can tell this is important stuff. This has impact on a large industry in the US. Now, let's kind of walk through the flow here. I'm on the USDA Organic topic. And when I click into Getting Certified Organic, I then land on a Becoming a Certified Operation. On this page, I click into the USDA Accredited Certifying Agent. And then I click into the Organic Certified Locator, where I am then sent to the Organic Integrity Database. This is the tool. Clicking into this tool represents success to the USDA. So let's talk a little bit more about that. To figure out how to analyze the USDA's site, you need to determine the specific action that represents success. So for folks at home, I want you to be thinking about what in that flow that I just showed you represented success and how you might reverse engineer that and pull that into your reporting. Now, to that end, the action of clicking into the Organic Integrity Database represents that specific action that the USDA believes infers success. Their audience is using the tool that they built for their audience, okay? So let's visually look into this flow and figure out how do we consider how to pull this reporting and define our goals. So obviously, this is the page I just illustrated. So traffic in theory could enter here, could enter other ways, but for the purpose of this demonstration, we want to keep it simple, straightforward for folks at home. So this is the USDA Organic topic page. As I mentioned before, traffic then clicks on getting certified organic, which sends you into this flow, becoming a certified operation, where you then click into the USDA accredited certifying agent, which sends you to the organic certifying agents page, where we then clicked the organic certified locator, which then send our traffic into the organic integrity database. This is the flow that we are trying to reverse engineer to figure out what action here literally represents success. Now, the cool thing here is that DAP empowers you to track this interaction using an outbound link event, which I've put here. We've got event label equals integrity certifiers and the certifiers location search page. Now, couple quick thoughts here. Some folks might be wondering, well, might people just simply go directly to the organic integrity database? And yes, that is possible. Think about it this way. Traffic is entering your site through the homepage, perhaps through the organic topic page, perhaps directly into the organic integrity database. Traffic enters websites sideways and from any which ways, whether they're coming from social or email or organic search. All to say, the user journey is not linear. Traffic can enter sites in any number of ways. And so you have to be careful about the context in which you look at your data. So just one quick caveat there to kind of call out. Okay, so let's think about how we need to report on this using that use case I just showed you. Let's walk through how to think about this. So I showed you the journey from the topic page all the way through into the organic integrity database. That's the journey. That's what we're presented with. Now, you may be wondering at home, okay, how do I figure out what I want to track here to define the success? So in this particular case, on the USDA site, in this flow that I've just illustrated, this button click is located on ams.usda.gov. It sends the user outbound into organic.ams.usda.gov. So there's a subdomain of a subdomain that the tool lives on. Now, that right there is my hint about what I need to be checking on. Now, the main way that I'm going to debug this is I'm going to use something called Google Tag Assistant. This is a Chrome extension that you can add to your browser to see what events and what different tags are firing, what data is being collected. And I've already gone ahead and done this for you. What you see on my screen is looking at that outbound link event click into the organic integrity database located at organic.ams.usda.gov. And the event label here for folks here, events obviously are interactions with content. To capture data about events and interactions with content, you need to have a category, action, and label. And as you see here, DAP automatically labels this as outbound. For the action, it captures these subdomains of the site where it's going to. And the label is capturing the path. So now I've identified this discrete, specific interaction that sends my traffic into the organic integrity database. And I'm going to see if I can use this to pinpoint that specific action that represents success to the USDA. So this is how you do it. You need to use Google Tag Assistant. For folks who have questions about diving into this, this is obviously a more technical tool. We're happy to discuss that offline. Please feel free to send us a note at support@dap.digitalgov.gov. So let me go back here. Now, let's talk about, now that I have this outbound event click, how do I identify that? Well, let me go and show you in Google Analytics where you can go and pull event label values. Now on my screen, I'm obviously in the USDA agency profile. I've gone to behavior and I'm looking at the month of October. I've gone to behavior, events, top events, and then I've filtered for the specific event label that I captured here in my Google Tag Assistant tool. So I'm searching for the specific event label that I mentioned right here, this integrity certifier location search page, .aspx. So now I have total number of events. And in this context, this represents total number of button clicks to the organic integrity database. So let me show you the flow again here. Every time somebody clicks on this button, an event fires automatically. That's the beauty of DAP. That's the elegance of how DAP collects data and engagement metrics. Now I know and I can infer that when we look at this data, I can see that in October, 2,065 events fired, and we can infer that that button click was clicked 2,065 times. Now, if I was curious about month over month performance, if I wanted to see, are we up or are we down? All I would need to do is go in here and select compare to, and then previous period, for example. Okay. So in October, we had 2,286 event outbound link clicks to the Organic Integrity database. Again, those are outbound links. DAP Google Analytics automatically collects that data. So one point here, if you want to set up a report to revisit this type of report quickly, you may want to consider creating a custom report, because getting through whittling down into these cuts of the data can sometimes be tedious and time consuming. But for right now, you really should just be using standard reports, which is what we're using right now, to identify what data points can we potentially pivot off of to understand and infer a success engagement metric. So now we've identified total events on that button click into the Organic Integrity database. So that's one piece of the puzzle now, right? Now we have to figure out the rest. So let's talk about that. So you might be asking yourself, okay, so what? We know how many times traffic in theory clicked on that button that sent traffic into the Organic Integrity database. Well, now you've identified part of your KPI. Remember, this is going to be a ratio. It's going to be a conversion rate. You need a numerator and a denominator. So now we can define an outbound link event conversion rate for that button click into the Organic Integrity database. So let's talk about how we can potentially illustrate this in a spreadsheet. Now, think about it this way. The formula for your outbound link event conversion rate for traffic entering the Organic Integrity database could be defined like such. Total number of outbound link events using the event label that I just illustrated to you in Google Tag Assistant, divided by total number of sessions entering the USDA.gov topics organic page, which I illustrated at the beginning of today's session, or the becoming certified page that I illustrated at the beginning of today's session. So the conversion rate formula is total number of events with that event specific event label that I've shown you in Google Tag Assistant, divided by total number of sessions entering any of these pages, or you could even look at it overall in total for the whole site. Now, the benefit of DAP here is that you can understand all of these different entry points into any page, whether that be on-site search, other subdomains, or other pages where this specific event can occur. The power of DAP is that it captures all of this engagement for you. You just need to figure out how to drill down into that engagement data and uncover these insights. I hope that makes sense for folks at home. So let's talk a little bit about how to now calculate this conversion rate. And let's take a look at just kind of a basic spreadsheet. Now, again, I want to drive home for folks at home. This is not an exercise in being perfect. You just need to get into a spreadsheet and just start doing calculations. It does not need to look pretty. You just need to get in there and start exploring how you might create formulas, how you might structure your data. Find the path of least resistance and just try to break stuff in a spreadsheet and see what happens. So let's look at an example of a spreadsheet that I just basically put together in the way that I like to do analysis. Now, you see here, this is obviously not pretty. It's not meant to be pretty. Doing analysis does not require you to create beautiful PowerPoints or wonderful spreadsheets. It requires you to think about how you're actually doing analysis. Now, you see here, I have just a kind of a note to myself. The event label is equal to this in case I need to use different reports. Now, the idea here is I'm just doing a quick analysis of the specific pages that I care about and how they're sending traffic that's clicking into the organic integrity database. So what I've done here, remember I mentioned we had 2,286 events. What I've done here is I've started to pull reporting. And I'm taking that data from the reporting and putting it in a spreadsheet. Now, this is super important because most people think that you can do all of this in Google Analytics. You can't. So let's talk a little bit about the methodology here. So I'm pulling reporting, trying to figure out, okay, I've got total number of events. Now I need to figure out total number of sessions entering any one page. So how do we think about pulling this data? Well, this first page that I illustrated in the beginning of today's session was the organic topic page. This is the URL. I clearly need to know that URL. So what I'm interested in is how many sessions from this page resulted in events occurring, clicking into the organic integrity database. So let's walk through how I could potentially pull a report. Now, in this view of the data, I'm in the month of October, and I'm clearly in behavior, site content, landing pages. Now, I've created an advanced filter where I've defined the organic topic page that's important to me and my team, right? And for the sake of this demonstration, I've already pulled in an event label, but I recommend getting just the total session count for your landing page. So let me remove this event label. And again, you're seeing how this works. This is literally the thought process that we go through when we think about this data. So here we've got the landing page. This is where the session begins. And I've basically told Google Analytics, DAP Google Analytics, I only want to see landing pages that contain topic/organic, right? Remember all those resources we had on that topic page? I only want to see any of those topics and the total session count, because it's important to me to understand what influence did this content from the organic topics page have on people clicking into the organic integrity database. So here I have 12,171 sessions for the month of October. So I've literally just copied and then pasted that into my spreadsheet. Now, since we've already defined our organic integrity click-through rate, conversion rate, by either number of events divided by total number of sessions, you could also just think of it as total number of sessions with that event as your numerator. So here you can see I'm testing out some different ideas here. And what I ultimately decided to do was look at the total number of sessions with those outbound link events. So let me show you how I came up with this. So I'm going to have to isolate sessions that contained a button click that fired with this event label into the organic integrity database. So I'm going to go back to my landing pages report where I got my session count overall to all of these organic topic pages. And then I'm going to add in a secondary dimension of event label. Then I need to add in an advanced filter for event label. And then I'm going to say exactly matching, and then I'm going to enter the event label that I captured, that I showed you in my Google Tag Assistant at the beginning of today's session. So let me apply this, and hopefully Google Analytics doesn't take too long. When it finally loads, that's going to show me the session count. It's going to change. So we're going to be able to say total number of sessions with these event clicks occurring. So we've got 21 sessions here with these pages where there was a button click into the organic integrity database. So now this has changed slightly, but previously when I put this report together, there was 23. Now, obviously there are caveats. We may be experiencing sampling, but the point of this is data is directional. You just need to kind of go with the flow and go exploring with your data. Now, a couple quick things. You can set up formulas where you look at your conversion rate. So what we have here is I've defined what is my conversion rate. So I've got my numerator, which is my total number of sessions with the outbound link click to the organic integrity database, divided by my denominator, which is the total consideration set of sessions entering that certified organic topic page. And here I see 0.19%. Now, on the surface, that's seemingly low. So, you know, we got to do some more exploring. Now, let's look at the other page. We've got organic certification becoming certified. Now, this is the other page. So let's take a look at this. So let me go in here and show you how I pulled this data. Now, I've got my event label here. You just copy this and remove this secondary dimension. Now we've got 3,837 sessions landing. So the sessions start on your landing page, which is the becoming certified page, okay? So we have 3,837 sessions. Now, I'm trying to figure out, okay, from this landing page, what number of sessions occurred with an outbound link of the event label for that button click. So I'm going to go up here into an advanced filter. I'm going to choose, let me just refresh my page here real quick. I'm going to choose an event label once the page loads. If you try to add a secondary dimension and you're searching for something that doesn't appear, sometimes it's a caching issue. You just need to reload your page. So I'm going to choose event label like I just did. And then I'm going to create an advanced filter for event label, exactly matching the event label value. And now once this loads, we'll in theory see the session count for traffic landing on this page with an event label of that button click into the organic integrity database. So we'll just let this load for just a few seconds. For whatever reason, Google Analytics has been kind of slow today. Now we've got 391 sessions. I take that number, put it in here. Oops. And now, again, I've calculated my numerator divided by my denominator, right? So again, just to reiterate, this is the total number of sessions entering a specific page, so the becoming certified page, and then the total number of sessions that contain that button click into the organic integrity database. Now, again, it's fluid. You don't necessarily need to do it this way. You just need to know what is that specific action that your users take into whatever you want them to literally do on your site. Now, here we see about a 10% conversion rate. So what this means is 10% of traffic from the becoming certified page, landing on the becoming certified page, actually entered the organic integrity database. So that's interesting. Now, this is just a slice of this analysis. This is simply to illustrate how you need to be thinking about pulling your reporting and creating a specific KPI to start to understand contextually which pages or which sections of my site are more impactful in getting my traffic to do what they need to do. So here in my analysis so far, we're seeing that the becoming certified page is actually potentially driving more conversion than the topics page. So now strategically, if I'm a website content manager, I can then say, okay, perhaps considering if we do all of our other analysis and we don't see any other odd kind of outliers, perhaps we need to be pulling the lever on additional marketing traffic to these topic pages to help drive incremental conversion, to help get our traffic to click on that button into the organic integrity database. Now that I've defined these two conversion rates, I can look over time at a granular level and better understand how we're faring, how we're assessing performance over time. And immediately, if you look at this, you now have context with which to report up to your senior leadership about how successful you are in terms of driving engagement on the USDA's Organic Integrity Locator or whatever tool you're trying to measure engagement with, how successful you are at getting your users to do X, whatever that X is, okay? Now, this is kind of a granular view of how I looked at conversion. Now, you could also look at total conversion, right? So let's assume these are the only pages that send this traffic into the Organic Integrity database. That's what they're designed to do. Well, here I've defined a conversion rate as total events divided by the sum of sessions to this page and this page. And I see that we have a 14% conversion rate. I want folks at home to think about this. Does this make sense? What's notable here to me is this is a really high conversion rate compared to perhaps the 10% conversion rate. So what this says to me is I need to do some more exploring. I need to see what other entry points are our users potentially entering and then clicking on that specific button click. And let me show you how you might think about doing that in the future. Now, I'm going to just show you how to do a quick report here. I'm going to go to the events report. Let me just copy my event label. Let me go to top events. I'm going to click on event label. And I'm going to filter off of this event label for that button that sends my traffic into the Organic Integrity database. Now, remember, I saw that conversion rate seemed a little bit high to me. So that tells me, okay, I need to do some more thinking about this. I need to do some more exploring in my data. So I've isolated my event labels. Okay. Next, I'm going to pull in a secondary dimension of page to see where these button clicks are happening. So we've got the organic certifying agents page. We've got, which is under this resources subdirectory. We've got a separate services directory with a subdirectory of organic certification and certifying agents. Looks like we got a number of different pages here that we need to figure out, okay, which of these pages is driving the majority of this engagement? And clearly we see here, this resources organic certifying agents page drove the majority of events. Now, did we take a look at this page in my spreadsheet? Let me just copy and paste this here. ams.usda.gov/resources/organic-certifying agents. No, we did not. So here, there's something happening here. So you need to be thinking about how to think about going exploring through your data, testing hypotheses, testing different ideas out about where the interactions are occurring so that you can better contextualize and do analysis on your spreadsheets with this data. But 30,000 foot view, this is how you need to be thinking about this. And this is why it will not take you just simply 1 hour. Oftentimes I can spend days, sometimes weeks on reports. In my career, I've definitely spent 2 weeks on one report doing this type of analysis, testing out different hypotheses. This is what folks on the webinar need to be thinking about. This is the direction we need to go in. Okay. So a couple takeaways, and I realize we're coming up towards the end of this webinar. This is how far we can get you with DAP, right? We can teach you how to use the tool and how to define your website mission goals and KPIs. But you, as DAP users, need to take it from here. You need to think in this direction that we've illustrated today. This is a paradigm shift, okay? Analysis is hard. There's no doubt about that. Figuring out what your goals are, remember goals need to be smart, but also figuring out your KPIs, this is tough stuff. But you need to think about this if you want to increase your conversion rate and be able to report out on this. You need to be able to report in this way if you want to look at your marketing mix and figure out what marketing levers you need to pull, whether that be posting a tweet on Twitter or sending out an email campaign. And as if it isn't hard enough to figure out all these things that we need to do to influence your website's audience, you simply need to start thinking about what are a handful of things that we're going to do to try to increase this conversion rate. But focusing in on your website mission, specific goals and KPIs is really the foundation to getting your team to the next level. And DAP Google Analytics is here to help you do this. We provide you the training, the foundational support for using the tool, but you need to take it from here. So if there's a big takeaway here, the next step in your analytics journey is figuring out how you do your site analysis. And we hope this has been helpful in illustrating how to think about this. And we hope you've taken some great takeaways on next steps for how to do this. So I wanted to thank everyone before we kind of close up today, and would love to hear any questions that folks have in the few remaining minutes that we have.
Great, thanks, Freddie. There are a couple questions, noting we only have about 4 minutes here before I'm sure people need to jump off, but we'll try to get through as many as we can. One question from Scott early on was, do you recommend setting up goals, basically doing them, getting everyone to agree in a group, or is that something that he could do solo?
That's a great question. I would definitely recommend defining your goals, maybe coming up with a few examples like we've shown you here today, and bringing that to the larger team. You need to get buy-in from your senior leadership on what goals are actually indicative of success. You don't want to define these goals in a vacuum, because obviously your whole team, your whole organization might think about these goals differently, or they might not know how to think about goals, in which case you're going to be kind of the educator for your team. So definitely partner with your strategic advisors and colleagues and senior leadership to help define and mold and craft those goals. Great question.
Great, thanks. KQ Sands asked a two-pronged question, but I answered the first part in the chat. But this one I think is interesting to address for everyone. What's the best way to decide what reasonable or achievable goals are?
Great question. So what I would do is literally create a spreadsheet, start figuring out, like we showed today, what is your KPI for a specific goal. Now, remember I said, once you define that KPI, you can then calculate this KPI going back in time. You could do a year, month by month, or 2 years, month by month. And then you're going to be able to create a benchmark off of that average for that KPI to better understand what is a reasonable target. And that's going to help you shape the conversation that you have with your senior leadership on what is a reasonable target. Obviously, if your average for a KPI is 2%, you don't want to say your target is 10%. right? You're never going to look good if you're reporting against that target. So you need to figure out what is your average over time, and then use that as a directional to figuring out what is a reasonable target.
That's great advice. I might just add that I've also seen in cases where I've seen some folks set a goal that wasn't currently measured, like you didn't have the data historically, or maybe if you're just implementing an analytics tool, I've seen, folks just kind of take a period of time in the beginning to set an initial goal that they think might be achievable, but it's kind of a beta test. And sometimes they find out that that's not achievable, and it takes a few months before they can find out what is reasonable. But as Freddie said, if you have historical data, certainly base it on that. And if not, it might just take a little bit of time. There is a question from Heidi that I think had to leave the call, but Heidi was talking about, and this is maybe a large question to ask at 1:59, but Heidi was saying, how do you try to measure goals that are less tangible, such as if it's not a PDF click or a specific action that's very tangible? She referred to things like, how can we try to define page value as a goal?
Yeah, that's a great question. So this is a tough one for everyone, right? You are limited by the technology of how your site is designed to render and present content to your audience. So if you don't have a specific, discrete, action that represents success, whether that be a click or a newsletter form or a subscription registration, if you don't have those and they're not being tracked, it's very difficult to infer whether or not somebody is tangibly becoming a successful session on your particular site. So by all means, feel free to reach out to the DAP team for any guidance on, if you want to get your development team to potentially create a piece of content that can be tracked by DAP. We're happy to advise on that. But that's really kind of that's where in the direction in which you need to be thinking. What can we literally track on the site, and how do we use that to reverse engineer what is our KPI for measuring the success of our goals?
Yeah, great. I told Heidi she should email us as well, and hopefully we can work with her to figure out a solution for her particular situation. Okay, very last question. I know we're over here. Wayne from Social Security said, should goals be built according to what a highly performing site would achieve, or as is for your own site?
That's a great question. So oftentimes many folks ask, what is my goal, right? What is the benchmark for that goal? I would ask Wayne, how do you define a highly successful site, right? Every site is different. Every site has a different average of success metrics, right? So what you need to do is literally just kind of explore your data, define a KPI, and look at the average for your site with that particular KPI. Let that KPI help you better define the benchmark through which you're going to assess the performance and success of your site against.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I would not hold a government site, for example, in comparison to goals for Amazon.com.
Correct.
All right, those are all the questions. If you want to wrap it on up, Freddie.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for attending today's webinar. We really appreciate the DAP community and your engagement, and we always appreciate your feedback after today's webinar. Please look out for that email. It'll be going out. We would really appreciate any feedback that you have, and we'll also be getting the deck. And as always, please feel free to reach out to us at the desk support line, or the DAP support line at dap@support.digitalgov.gov.